Don't quit your day job. Number one, do not. What you're thinking about, it's called a minimum viable product. Create it as good as you can, not perfect, like you said before, and find someone who will pay you for it and figure out why. They're very simplistic ideas, but they will tell you a lot about your idea. They'll tell you whether it makes sense to somebody else. Is someone going to give you money for it? Is it the right amount of money? Is it the right packaging? Is it the right, are you conveying the right idea? And do it as quickly as possible. Don't wait.
UnLost Cause is a community that shares stories of individuals 40 and beyond who found the courage to reclaim their dreams and live without regrets. I'm David New, and I hope these stories help you find joy, purpose, and passion in a life true to you. Today's UnLost Cause guest is Llance Kezner, co-founder of Millie Sipping Broth, a family business that literally started at the kitchen table and now finds its way into nearly 2,000 Walmart stores. A former tech VP turned food entrepreneur, Llance, alongside his wife Lori, a teacher, pioneered a new food category during a global pandemic with their innovation, broth in a tea bag. From the humble beginnings of Pike Place Market to going viral during COVID to winning a golden ticket at Walmart, this story is steeped in purpose, resilience, and reinvention. Welcome to UnLost Cause, Llance.
Nice to be here, David. Thank you very much.
So one of the things I learned about it, I was just so fascinated. And I know some of the community at UnLost Cause may not know what your product is. So do you mind just level setting and sharing what the product is?
Well, let me start off with a story, and it's something that everyone probably can connect with. Imagine if you are a teacher in a room filled with 24 rambunctious kindergarten students, and you've been engaged with them for hours, okay? When that recess bell hits, everyone is ready, for a break. And so my wife, Lori, when she was a teacher, she wanted to be her very best. And she knew that to be her best, she needed to have kind of a strategy around recharging and re-energizing. So she would go into the break room at school, and the only thing that was there to kind of, help her were leftover cakes and cookies and stuff that had sugar and caffeine in it. And none of that was on her wellness plan. She wanted something savory and satisfying to sip on that reminded her of her mom, home cooking. But at the time, there was nothing on the market. And that's when, together in our home kitchen, created this idea of, this savory, drinkable broth. And she said, put it into a tea bag so I can make it really quickly. We took it the teacher's break room. She took it to the teacher's break room, came back from class, and they were all gone. And so that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
Wow, I love that. And I can't wait to dive in a little bit more. But I do want to ask this isn't your first entrepreneurial venture, if I'm correct. And if that's the case, I'm curious, like when you were a child, did you have any entrepreneurial tendencies or anything creative on that side that you kind of connecting the dots, you look back, you're like, oh, wait a second, I kind of knew I was going to do something on my own.
I think I was born into it, and my parents were business owners, and from a very early age, I remember dad, for holiday money would sell Christmas trees on a piece of property he had in downtown Bellevue. And I was there, 5 or 6 years old, helping him sell Christmas trees. And I remember the first pitch that I had to somebody was, oh, that $30 Christmas tree is nice, but the $75 one over here is so much nicer. So I think that sales comfort was the first indication that I had that I could probably sell anything, and then realized later that it was more about solving problems for people than anything else. And, like I said, I think I was just born into it without really making a conscious effort.
Yeah, no, that's great. Especially sharing how you did your first sales pitch? Were you successful? Did they buy the 70 or
Oh yeah.
$75
Well, who
one?
can refuse a pudgy little 6-year-old telling you that you should buy a more expensive Christmas tree? And
Yeah,
you'll be happier with that.
yeah. Do you want to treat the family or cheat the family?
Well,
Come
I
on,
like
right?
that. I love that. Okay, you need to, copyright that.
Okay. So then, Lance, so you learned these lessons from your dad around sales. Like you had the benefit of having, it sounds like an entrepreneurial, at least father. And I don't know if your mother was entrepreneur or if you had any other similar type of role models in your family. But what were some of the other lessons that you learned that you picked up and incorporated into your toolkit, even at a very young age?
Yeah, so my mom absolutely was very much part of it. In fact, for a woman at that time before I was born, she was traveling around the world doing business around the world, and it was very unusual. So both of them were, kind of coming at it from different angles. But I think I remember listening to her talking to extremely large clients on the phone, taking orders, or being a resource for them. And I think that was, and that was my mom's approach. My dad's approach was go out, beat the bushes, find the next customer, but my mom was take care of the customer. And so from both of these sides, I saw what it really required to keep your machine going. And I got really good perspectives, both good and bad. Because sometimes beating the bushes, you take no enemies, and you might, anger some people or whatever. But then from the take care of your customer side, really be careful, but also know the limits of what you can provide as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that 1-2 punch. One's more like transactional sale, and the other is sounds like much more consultative, where if someone makes a mistake, they might lose their job. So you really think about, serving their needs and looking at it within their eyes, which I'm sure has served you very well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. And then so you grow up in this very entrepreneurial family, and then you end up tell me about like what you studied in college and how your early days of your career, did you go into sales or marketing or something totally unrelated?
Yeah. So always had a job in sales from high school, selling shoes at Naturalizer in Bellevue Square, or Bernie's and Bottoms, selling clothes. So that was always, part of the deal. When I was going through school at the University of Washington, I had a few other jobs that were a little more mechanical. But when I graduated with a degree in political science, what I really focused on was global trade and how global markets affect policies and things like that. And then instantly got into business with my dad, who started another company. And we were doing international trade. I was, went to do business in China just a couple of years after the Tiananmen Square incident, which was
Wow, that
pretty
was
wild
early.
because at the time, Westerners were a little afraid to go back to
Yeah.
China. So I got a really good education firsthand in, what it was like to do global business.
Yeah. And can you share, like, in that education, like, what were maybe 1 or 2 nuggets that stuck out to you? Because, I would imagine, given the growth of Millie Sipping Broth, you have to lean on some of those nuggets today. So I'm curious, like, at that early age in your early 20s and Tinnaman was 89, so in the early 90s, like, what were some of those lessons that really impacted you that you carried through today?
I think that the key to any successful product, let's say that you're going to make, is to always be aware that what you have in mind and what and how it's manufactured sometimes don't come out the same. And you got to be ready for that. You got to be ready to pivot and adapt to adverse situations, because they will come at you in the most unanticipated ways. And this happened when we were bringing products in from China early on, where the quality wasn't the same or the description wasn't exactly the same. And so you have to be able to take that bad thing and create something good out of it. And to this day, not I'm saying everything that happens is bad, but there are issues that come up that you have to be able to pivot with and just look at the current economy and what's happening. And so you have to be able to kind of look around that and think outside of the box in order to continue to grow and survive. So that's what I really learned early on.
Yeah, I really appreciate that growth mindset because a lot of people could sit down and be woe is me type of attitude or why is this happening to me? And that's not going to solve anything. But you're thinking about, well, let's flip it around, glass half full, especially as an entrepreneur and people looking to you and, make it and, having at least that positive mindset to, make the best out of that situation.
Right. Absolutely.
And then, so you're working with your dad, and then, you shared with me this seminal event in 2009, but, maybe walk us through, like, from the early 90s, like, what were you progressing in your career before we can talk about kind of this, like, major event in 2009?
Well, I learned very quickly that working with my dad was not going to be a long-term thing because we butted heads like constantly. Having said that, I learned everything I know about being, persistent and building the business from him and learning how to sell from him. So there were things that were good things that came out of it. But I knew that I just needed a perspective outside of him that could help kind of shape my path going forward. So he and I, separated, and then I went off and became an adventure tour guide for a little while, taking people all over North America on adventure tours. I was the youngest guide in the company. And then I lived around the world for a little while, just again, wanting to kind of appreciate, I think, what I had here in Seattle. And the only way you can do that is by going and living someplace else for a while and then coming back and realizing, okay, I'm ready to, start the next phase of my life.
Got it. No, that's wonderful. And, another positive perspective, right? Going elsewhere, experiencing it, and then coming back with gratitude and appreciation in a new lens. So in 2009, you shared that you got laid off. So that was a seminal moment in the kind of the spark and then the laying the one of the early steps in this journey. So where were you working in 2009 when this event happened? Because 2009 was that GFC, I would imagine it's probably related to that.
Yeah. So I was working for a couple of tech startups here in Seattle. Both of them were in the customer service automation technology. And I was really excited about that. I mean, I was selling and doing business development for some cutting edge technology that we all take for granted now. One of them was chat technology for websites. We were the company I worked for was the first company that came out with that. And now it's, it's everywhere. And then the next company I worked for was voice automation technology, which is everywhere now as well. So it was an early stage company that was working with companies to help make customer experiences better. So that was all cool. And I think I became addicted to things that were unique, that were either the innovators, not the iterators. They were the ones that were, taking the slings and arrows as they were out creating a market or creating an idea and perfecting an idea that would later go on to become like, just normal. Everyone would just expect it. So that's, I think, what I got attracted to, because it was, why do something that's boring and everyone else is doing? Do something that's interesting that gets you excited every morning to wake up to.
Yeah, wonderful. And then unfortunately, because of, some of the headwinds that were happening in the macro environment, it sounds like you were laid off in 2009, right? So, everyone processes it a little bit differently. How did you process it when it happened to you?
At that time, also, I had lost a couple of family members as well. And so, including my dad in 2009. And so it was like a tidal wave, that just didn't stop, that kept kind of rolling over me. And thank God my wife was working and could, make sure that we had a stable income for our family and our two boys. For a while, all we could do is just focus on stability, making things as stable as possible. And, at that time, we also realized that part of the issue that we had was that our destinies, our lives were controlled by other people. The jobs that we had were in other people's hands. Just because we had a job today didn't mean we would have one tomorrow. And that wasn't in our control. And what we decided was, let's take back control of that really important part of our lives and see if we can take our entrepreneurial ideas and put them out in a way that is meaningful to us, right? That makes us excited, that is innovative, and that we can, possibly grow from and support our family with.
I think for a lot of the listeners, one of the things that, I first learned when I was an entrepreneur is like, people say that being an entrepreneur, you don't have a lot of job security. But the flip side is the last person you're going to lay off is yourself. So, you can actually have some stability as well, especially once the train leaves the station and it's gaining momentum. So it sounds like you and your wife were very deliberate about that. And did she come from an entrepreneurial background, or what was it? I mean, a school teacher is a very stable occupation, but people do that for a lot of reasons. And school teachers are amazing in terms of giving back. So I'm just curious, like, what was her background? And because it sounds like she was hand in hand with you to want to do something where you controlled your own destiny, maybe something more entrepreneurial.
No, she did not come from that background, but she always had a desire to create things on her own. And so from a little girl, she told me that she would paint little buttons and sell them to neighbors and friends, or paint t-shirts. She's an artist as well. So she would put that together and create products and things to sell to people. So, she always had that, even though she didn't grow up with it like I did. And yeah, so to her, starting something like this was not new, but I think that and she's laughing at me right now, but I think the uncertainty part of it was new for her. But that's what I had grown up with all my life. So I had some comfort in that uncertainty, and she didn't. So that's why we both worked consulting jobs and other jobs for many years until we grew our business to a point where it was stable.
And the vision, it was so vivid when you shared earlier that, 2009 was tremendously challenging for you. And I wrote it down. You said it was like a nonstop tidal wave, like boom, boom, boom. And on one hand, it would feel like it'd be so overwhelming, debilitating, and hard to get any action done to even contemplate doing your own startup. But on the other hand, I can see it's like, well, I have to do something, and then this is something to preoccupy my mind. Where were you in that spectrum? Because I just see this imagery of like, these waves just rolling over you. Like, how were you reacting, and and where were you on both ends of those spectrum?
Yeah, I don't recall necessarily the kind of like the breakthrough moment after, dealing with that. But Lori and I love to cook and entertain. And for some reason, to this day, we still have a problem making salad dressing. I don't know. We're in the food business. We've been in the food business for a long time, and we're terrible at making salad dressing. And I made some salad dressing one night, and it had way too much garlic in it. Like, we're talking, like a third of the jar was like chunks of garlic on that's, like way too much garlic. After everyone had left, Lori saw the garlic and she put a spoon down into it and took a chunk of the garlic and tasted it. And she was way braver than I was. And she said, "You have got to taste this. This is amazing. You got to taste this garlic. It's incredible." So I tasted it. And she said, "Do you think we can make something like this and sell it?" And that really was the beginning of that spark, where I thought, well, okay, I don't know anything about making something. I know how to sell things, but I don't know how to make it, especially food. And that kind of did preoccupy and provide a focus in a way that I hadn't had before. And that kind of kicked off our ventures into food. And there were several before we came up with the broth.
Yes. Okay. So that's awesome. Thanks for that segue and teeing it up. So it's so vivid. Your wife's tasting this garlic and is like, hey, this is fantastic. And I'm sure you taste it and you're like, maybe we have a tiger by the tail. And everyone likes to think from the outside that's overnight success story, but entrepreneurs know that it takes a lot of grinding, a lot of grit to get to where we are. So you talked about many different iterations before you hit on the Millie sipping broth. So maybe you can highlight some of the iterations or products that you were trying and the learnings that you got from each one of those.
Yeah, so that first product was called Garlic It, and we had fun with the name. Explaining it was basically garlic as a condiment, right? Or garlic you can eat right out of the jar. And everyone was like, what are you talking about? This is crazy stuff. But the minute they tasted it, they said, oh, this is pretty incredible. I can see how I can use this. We ended up a year and a half later, we ended up winning Outstanding Product of the Year at the Fancy Food Show in New York. And got featured on the front cover of Specialty Food magazine. We didn't know what hit us. We really didn't.
Holy smokes.
Well, not only did we not know, we didn't even attend the award ceremony because we thought they put us on the list of potential winners and we didn't go because we didn't think, it was like, it was in New York or something. We're like, and I got a call from the PR director for the Specialty Food Association, which, at the time was huge. She said, you won. And can I ask you the next time you're up for an award, can you guys please come to the ceremony? So that was the point where we go, oh, maybe our ideas are kind of interesting to this category of, to food, specialty food. So that was a highlight. And then we realized, there were specific challenges in creating a product like that was very nichey. And, it was heavy, it was glass, shipping it was, always an issue. And I could imagine myself spending, years trying to get people to taste it. And I thought, there's no way we're going to be able to grow with this. So at the same time, what we decided was, let's just take every idea we have, create it as a product to see if people will buy it. And the broth was second. The broth one was second, and completely different manufacturing requirements, which, by the way, would take another 5 years to perfect. Simple idea, broth in a tea bag, but really hard to make. But the fundamentals were there, right? Which is this something from the very beginning? Is this something innovative that makes us excited? That's the number one thing. Does this provide a solution to a problem, which was also something that we knew that we needed to focus on? The garlic was fun and it tasted great, but it really wasn't a solution to a problem. The broth was a solution to that problem I was talking about really early on, which is providing a way for people to kind of take a break that helps them re-energize and makes them feel good.
So Lance, that's fascinating because I would imagine that most entrepreneurs, when they win this prestigious New York food show on their first attempt with Garlic It, like they would think like, I'm going to conquer the world. But you stepped back with your wife and said you had a rubric, which was twofold. One, we have to be excited about it. And then two, it solves a real life solution. And you put it through the rubric and you actually put it aside to go for your number two choice, which was the sipping broth in a tea bag. How hard was it for you to be intellectually rigorous and honest to actually do that? Because I find a lot of entrepreneurs, they get very tied up and emotional about a problem or solution that they can't let go.
Well, winning that award was a great thing, but what I realized was after a while people really didn't care. And I thought, "Oh, you should care because we did this great thing." And I realized that the only people it really mattered to was us, right? Cuz it gave us, no one's ever going to be able to take that award away from us. We won that award. We've proven ourselves. We've proven that we can do this. But, the sales were, it was fine. We were getting attention from some really big companies that were intentionally not doing business with us because they realized we didn't know what we were doing. And so we learned a lot through that. And I think that it was a little bit humbling to go through that process and realize we had a lot to learn. And I think that it's not something that we wanted to necessarily, and we didn't really fail. The product didn't fail. It just, had a, now that we look back at it, it was a great teaching moment for us to hopefully, find something else that's going to go forward. So I don't know if that answers your question. I think it kind of goes around.
Yeah, no, I think I'm just impressed about how rigorous you could be when most people, if they stepped up the first time at the plate and hit a home run, they would like hold it very tightly. But you looked at some of the silver lining and said, well, it was great. We learned a lot, but this isn't the one that we're going to hitch our ride to. We're going to try something else that can be maybe a bigger solution, because I think you were excited about both of them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's transition and talk about the star Millie's sipping broth. So tell me about the early days, because you mentioned that you made some samples and your wife brings it to the teacher's lounge and it's an instantaneous hit, right? You have like a tiger by its tail. And so tell me a little bit about that progress, especially in the early days when that caused you to get more excited to want to lean into it.
So based on our previous experience, I knew that we needed to get basic samples of the product or basically created examples of the product to two constituents: an end user who is not a friend or family member, all right, who's going to actually pay us money for it. And the other constituent is we needed to find places where it could be sold. So we didn't waste a lot of time focusing on the way it was packaged or designed or anything like that. What we wanted basically was to figure out who could make it for us, because we also learned this early on, is that we were not manufacturers. We were idea people and sales and marketing people. And I think a lot of people get hung up on manufacturing things when they're not really, that's not their strong set. But anyway, so that's where we took it. We were at the Pike Place Market selling the garlic. And so we had the booth. And so I thought, well, let's just add the broth to the booth and see if people will buy it. It was during the summer in the Pike Place Market. They get about 11 million people a year that walk through there, most of them during the spring and summer during cruise season. So if someone's going to pay to buy broth when it's 95 degrees outside, that's a pretty good indication that, what we've got is something good. And would also help us perfect the sales pitch, the packaging idea, the concept around it, right? Does it make sense to people in the way that we're talking about it? Early on, we had the name of it was Millie's Savory Teas. And everyone, they go, savory tea, yuck, that's terrible. In their mind, they were like, that's a terrible idea. What are you talking about? They would taste it and they go, this tastes amazing, but a savory tea, because in their mind, they're thinking tea is sweet or fruity or like green tea. It's not like soup. So talk about letting go of a tightly held, this is our idea. Oh, and it was so innovative that two other companies copied us 6 months after. And one of them was a really big company. They took the savory tea idea and they took our formulations. They went to Whole Foods and failed because of that same issue, where in people's minds, they were like, this is not something. And they also left out an ingredient that made it really taste good. So it forced us to change our name also to Millie's Sipping Broth. So, we were talk about being thrown these challenges left and right. We just had to adapt and change in order to keep our vision going forward.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what's the origin of Millie's?
So Millie was Lori's mom, Millie. And when she was, when she wanted something savory, she remembered the family dinners that Millie would have and how comforting, that was. And so that was the idea that we had, is we wanted to convey an idea of comfort and being taken care of with the name. And so Millie, it's an old-fashioned name, but it's got this image of this, this person is going to take care of you.
I used to live by Pike Place Market, and so I would sometimes go up there, get my groceries or items if I'm having a dinner party. So when you were there, you had a booth, and would you just have hot water boiling and people would say, oh, I want to try the tomato basil or the chicken broth or the fantastic, and then you would just pour some and they would try it? Or how were you? And then what was people's reaction aside from, hey, we don't get the name, but were they just like, wow, this is great. Like, can I get some right now?
So we had an air pot, the where you go and some coffee stands have a pump pot. So we would fill that with the broth ahead of time. And then we had little sample cups. So, they would come up, and I mean, there were literally, on a Saturday, as an example, there might be 50 to 75,000 people that would walk by the booth. Most of them would just walk straight by. They wouldn't stop because they're there kind of for the senses and the sights and to take pictures and everything like that. But for the people that would stop, we would describe it to them, and they would either want to take a taste or not. And most of the time, when they would take a taste, they would kind of go, they were like, whoa, this is really good. Now, it was my job to figure out how to get them to buy it. And, that included, was the price right? Was the way I was describing it? Was the way I was describing about how they would use it on an ongoing basis right? And so, luckily, to this day, we still have people who bought it, who've discovered us at the Pike Place Market and still buy the product. So, we're very happy about that. They've gone through all the different, there were times where we were making the product, the company that was making our product was burning the ingredients and it tasted terrible. But that's what that did, is literally thousands and thousands of, 5 to 10 second pitches. And everyone talks about, you got to get your elevator pitch. Well, yeah, we have a 5 to 10 second pitch that was honed and has been re-honed and gone from simple to complicated and back to simple and everything like that. But that's what it did for us is, and to this day, there's a company now in the Pike Place Market that sells our product for us, which is great. Yeah.
And I think for the UnLost Cause community, one of the takeaways here is sometimes people, especially first-time entrepreneurs, get really wrapped up in having perfect, right? And perfect is the enemy of good, right? And what I'm hearing from Llance is around, hey, I just want to get it out there and get repetitions, reps and sets to see what are people thinking about it, because it's never going to be perfect. It might get burned, something might happen, but I want to understand, is the product fitting? Is the pricing fitting? Is the description fitting? And it sounds like you got a lot of that, and which helped you really accelerate down your pace of learning, which is the critical ingredient early on.
Yeah. And, going back to what you were talking about, how did I get over, all those waves of grief and everything like that from job loss and people and everything like that. Both Lori and I are very social people, talking to people, meeting new people and all that kind of stuff. And this really gave us that opportunity. And it still does to this day. There are times where I just crave doing a trade show or something like that, because you get such honesty from people right there. And I think that honesty is really what drove us to keep improving our ideas around everything that we were doing.
So what year was it when you were, doing the tabling and getting a lot of this great kind of feedback from people walking through Pike Place Market? Is this like 2014?
2014,
or when,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
2014.
Yeah.
Got it. And so we haven't hit COVID yet. Were there any other notable milestones or challenges you had to overcome before, some of the big COVID moments that we'll touch on in a minute?
So again, our idea of putting dehydrated vegetables and herbs and seasoning in a tea bag, simple idea. Finding the right partner manufacturer, extremely difficult. We probably went through 4 different organizations during that time period. basically maxing out their capabilities, and really difficult to find, the next kinds of companies to work with, because we were basically taking an idea and putting it into a machine that was not meant for that. And also the desire of these people to learn about something new, sometimes they weren't interested. So that was probably the largest challenge, going through the manufacturing capabilities, the desire, and then also continuously trying to improve the quality of the product. And to this day, we still have kind of old-fashioned looking design around our product, but the number one focus has always been on the quality of the experience with the product. And so that's always been, the thing. But the challenge of getting to that was pretty big.
Yeah. And these facility partners who are producing the product, were they all local, regional, domestic, or also international, that you were scouring for the right ones?
Everyone's been domestic, but yeah, we started off local and had to just follow the desire and the experience that some of these people had. And so, it would lead us to different areas. And that was another thing too. You have to let go of that. I meet a lot of people who are in the food business who are starting products or whatever, and they want to control everything. They want to make their own thing. They want to, focus on investing in a facility, and nobody knows how to make it but them. And luckily we learned early on that, yes, these people have been doing this for, the first person we worked with had been in the food manufacturing business for 50 years. And, and I learned a lot from him, because he would look at what we were talking about and go, "Lance, what are you talking about? That's, salt is salt." Just stuff like that. But yeah, the focus really was on continuously building up our volume, maintaining the quality on one side. It's like playing a perfect round of golf all the time. Then I got to find places to sell it. Then I got to find, not only do I have to find places to sell it, I got to find the people who want to go buy it from those places, right? So it's a continuous circle of really taxing out your wherewithal to keep all these things going, juggling all these things going, because you're the center of that, right? My wife and I are the center of that. And each one of these things are requiring your attention. And if you don't pay attention to them, they'll kind of quickly discard you. And you're like, "Oh no, I need you." So these.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by the time COVID hits, this is about a decade in the overnight success story of Millie sipping broth. Share with the audience, what happened, because you mentioned you went viral during COVID.
Yeah. So right before COVID, we got discovered by Weight Watchers. And Weight Watchers, they basically had a way for us to partner with them to sell our product to their 4.5 million subscribers. And the reason why our product fit for the Weight Watchers program was because it was 0 point. Also, one of the initial reason that Lori wanted to drink broth was because it helped satisfy her snacking urge. It gave her the satiety, that savoriness made her feel like she ate something, but it was, a 10-calorie broth. And Lori was also a lifelong Weight Watchers member. And so those three things kind of propelled us into the Weight Watchers universe. We had to go through an extreme gauntlet with their quality, their nutritionists, all their standards people, in order to get into their system. But we made it. And so we got in, and then COVID hit, right? And everyone is staying home, they're gaining weight, they're losing weight, everyone's going crazy with everything, right? But the one thing that was happening was people were ordering food online like crazy. And so it propelled us to all these people who had never heard of us before. And it also pushed us becoming at the time, the best-selling vegetable broth on Amazon at the same time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. And when you say that Weight Watchers discovered you, did they come to you, or did you reach out to them?
It's a little bit of both. It was a little bit of both. Yeah.
Got it. And then when these orders start pouring in, I'm sure there's a tension between, well, how much do I pre-stock my inventory? But if I pre-stock it too much, then I've got to pay for it. So I might have a cash flow challenge. But if I stock too little and then I don't get it out, people might be super disappointed. So how did you think about that equation?
Yeah, just like that. I mean, there's no exact way of doing it. There were times where we did run out of flavors or we had to, we would sell an assortment and then one of the flavors is gone out of the assortment. So what do? You have to adapt and you beg for forgiveness. Sometimes we were taking orders and we knew we wouldn't have product for like 3 weeks. So, we're like, oops, sorry, your order's on the way kind of thing. And yeah, so it was a big dance, and luckily we were able to, in that system, we were able to control the inventory. So we could say, oh, there's only so much of this available. It
Okay.
wasn't just like open-ended. I would love
Got
to
it.
have
Got it.
been, but
Yeah.
we could control it in certain ways.
So I think one of the beauty of getting a lot of online orders is you're able to start getting some signal from the noise. Like, for example, what flavor, did you and your wife think was going to be a hit, but it becomes a dud, and something that becomes like you didn't think was going to take off, like, zooms to the top. Were you able to get a lot of good insights through like this influx of Weight Watchers related sales?
At one time, we had up to 7 flavors of the broth. And early on, we thought, oh, if we release flavors kind of in limited fashion, that will spur demand, and it was difficult to do that, but it did give us the opportunity to kind of test out what people were looking for. And yeah, what we ended up doing was culling a couple of the flavors based on that feedback. We had taken away a couple before we got into Weight Watchers, but then we were able to kind of pare it down even more. And it wasn't that the flavors weren't good, it was that they didn't fit what they were looking for. So, we got all kinds of feedback from these people. We got, this is great, this is terrible, this is, I've been giving it to my mother who's going through chemo treatment. This is, I've given this as a gift because, it's so amazing. Or how come it's so salty? Which, by the way, we reduced the salt from normal bouillon by 75%, and we're like, okay, compared to what? Compared
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
tea, compared to coffee.
Water?
Yeah, it's a lot saltier than coffee. But we kept getting really good reviews. And Weight Watchers, really promoted us in their system. And that helped us kind of decide to launch in a major way to mass retail.
All right. Well, let's talk about that because you mentioned this golden ticket, right? And can you share with the audience what this competition or this whole golden ticket process is to begin with?
So we had gone out to, we kind of were looking at, and we partnered with an organization that helps us with operations, financing, and sales. And we've been working with them now for about 5 years. And they've really kind of been our catalyst for growth with Lori and I kind of on the front end of the brand, looking for opportunities and looking for ways to grow the brand. They're helping us do that. So I saw an opportunity. Every year Walmart has an event where they're looking for domestically made products that they could consider to buy for their stores. It's called Walmart Open Call. And they put out a call for products in 2023, 7,000 products applied. And then one day I had completely forgotten about it. And one day I get an email and it says, oh, yeah, we want you to come to Bentonville to meet with us in 3 weeks. You're chosen to meet with us in person. And so I was like, that's great. I'm having hernia surgery. I can't travel. So luckily, our partner, they had two salespeople they said, fine, we'll go. And what we learned is that out of the 7,000 things, well, they only chose 700 to meet with, 400 of them virtually and 300 of them in person at their campus. And they do the meetings all in one day, which is pretty amazing. I know. Yeah. So they went and they basically said, oh, yes, it's a 25-minute meeting. And they had been drinking. I guess they had asked for samples before we sent samples. They had been drinking our product and they said, yeah, let's do it. We're going to give you a golden ticket. But we didn't know also that Sam's Club wanted us as well. So we got 2 golden tickets. The next day we went and met with them and they also gave us a golden ticket. So we got 2. And then found out that only about 70 companies out of all of those got golden tickets. So we were very pleased about that. We had to wait about a year before we could tell anybody because we didn't know what it meant. We didn't know how many stores we were going to be in. We didn't know when we were going to be in or anything like that. But we wanted to wait until we were actually on the shelves. And yeah, they put us in almost 2,000 stores.
So what an accomplishment from 7,000 to 700 to 70. That's 1%. And, given the massive scale of not only Walmart, but Sam's Club, I mean, it can be company changing. So how did you and Lori feel when you found out? Because you weren't in person, you're going through surgery or recovering from surgery. Like, when they called you or they Zoomed you and let you know, what were the emotions?
It was surreal. I didn't really know what to expect. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before. And I was, they were telling me this and I'm like, okay. Now, my partners they're used to doing business with very large companies. So to them, it was very subdued. It was like, oh yeah, they gave us these deals and we're going to be doing something. To me, it was like, what just happened? And so, yeah, it took us a while to process what was going on, but it really hit reality when we started having to do all the documentation and all of the paperwork to get ready and then start working with our production facility hey, in 8 months, we're going to be producing more product in 1 week than we had produced in a year before. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so when you get the golden ticket, is it all you get is the access, like the shelf placement? Not just only. I mean, that's already incredible. But do they help you, partner with you, help you ramp from, what you just said, like a 50x increase, or what else it comes with this golden ticket?
You get the insight of the buyer, which is invaluable. Okay. So Walmart is the #1 grocery store in the country, right? I don't know what the market share is now. It's probably like 30 to 40% of the entire country, shops at Walmart for their groceries. The soup aisle where we are, okay, is the soup aisle for 30% of the entire country, right? And we're sitting next to, by the way, the soup aisle is dominated by Campbell's Soup, right? So we are at eye level next to a brand that has been around for over 100 years, okay, that focuses on innovation. Now, we're a very innovative brand as well. So we're very delighted that they're putting us next to another innovative brand. It's amazing. But we have like a blip on the radar screen compared to Campbell's Soup. So what we had to learn was inferred by what they expected. They weren't going to handhold us through anything. So we had to figure out a way to get people to, what if they came across our item, that they would either want to try it or have knowledge about it. And that's probably the hardest part of getting into any retail, whether it was 2 stores or 2,000 stores, is that awareness by the consumer is critical. And it's still something that, we don't struggle with it, but it is a challenge that, every brand goes through.
Yeah, because I would imagine that there's this dynamic or this equilibrium where if you're Campbell's, almost everyone's heard about the brand. So if you're thinking about soup, it's almost synonymous to some degree. And then for your audience, it's either, hey, I heard about the brand and I'm going to go seek it out at Walmart, or I'm just passing by and I'm like, oh, what's this? And then the packaging just has to explain itself very succinctly because otherwise I'll just take Campbell's because it's a known product.
And that is it's a constant challenge. And I think I mentioned that our packaging really hasn't changed in a while because we designed it to be sold directly to people online, where you have a little more, you can have a video, you can have social media with it, you can, there's all kinds of stuff. But when you have 3 to 5 seconds to catch someone's eye, there are other challenges there. And we're continuing to learn as we go out into mass retail like that, oh boy, we're going to have to make some changes. And we do have some changes coming to our packaging, but still critical to us is that experience, that customer experience. So, even if we only get, a tenth of the people that walk by to even pay attention to it, and maybe a tenth of those people to buy it, we want that experience that they have for them to go, wow, I'm going to tell other people. So that's the only thing we've got going for us right now, because you can't spend your way into a stratosphere like Campbell's and getting, awareness like that. It's just not economical, but we can make people's experience stand out. And that's what we're really focused on right now.
And if I remember correctly, I mean, we have more Costco's up here in the Pacific Northwest than Sam's Club. But when I used to live in Texas, I remember I think also had like the samples that you can try this or that. And I'm thinking about this because at your Pike Place market experience where you gave out samples and it was wildly effective, is that something that can be replicated at Sam's, or is that also like, because, Campbell's isn't doing that because they're a known quantity and you know what you're going to get. But for someone new, do they also help support you in that manner?
We did do sampling at Sam's, and you run a risk. There's a couple of risky things about that because, they may not prepare it properly, or they absolutely don't have the knowledge behind the product. So you're talking to a sample person that, a few minutes before they were sampling, bread, so there's, you know what you're getting for. But the fact that people can try it, yeah, it's absolutely critical. Sam's has a different kind of population than Costco does, but, tapping into that is great. And then, having the right price on the shelf for a different idea, gets people to try it. And if they bring it home and try it and then they like it, or they give it to friends or whatever, that's the whole point, right? It's like the warehouse clubs, they do rotations of products. And in our case, it's not something that they're going to carry all the time, but it's a rotation of an idea. So we were hoping that the Sam's getting it out at a really economical price will drive the people to go back to Walmart, right? Because it's all tied in the same ecosystem to get more of that product. So that's the, when we launched all this last fall, we're following that through. Right now we're going into kind of the less, people don't drink as many, hot drinks during the summer months, but we're hoping that that's going to carry through back, to the fall and winter.
And then Lance, when you get like a landmark whale of a, distribution partner like Walmart, is it like a fast follow where all of a sudden your phone just starts ringing off the hook and Safeway, QFC, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, or, whatever you name it, all these other distribution points start calling you because they see it? Or is it still like, hey, ground and pound, we're still working on each of these very methodically?
Yeah, it's still very methodical because we created a new category. Some of these other accounts are very, I wouldn't say that they're, hesitant. I think that they want to see how we do. But it has helped us get new accounts. I mean, there was an account that we just got from Northern California a week ago. A year and a half ago, the buyer said, get a national account and then come back to me and I'll buy it. So we did. We got a national account, went back to him, and then he bought it. He did what he said he was going to do. So there's two dynamics that are going on, which is other accounts don't want to be left out of not having something that a major account like that has, but they also, want to make sure that people will come and get it. And the more people see it, it doesn't matter where they see it, the more people see it, the more they'll go, oh, I saw this, or that's familiar to me for some reason or whatever. They all know that, right? It's like auto row, right? You put all the cars in one area. They all like that because they know that, you're drawn to that. For us, because we're an innovative brand versus an iterative brand, we're not a challenger. We're not challenging anything because everything that we're doing is incremental sales to the category because it's not competing with anything else. We're still in that discovery mode with a lot of these accounts. But here's the thing. We don't want a fast, rapid growth because the issue that I was talking about before is we have to get people to go and seek it out. And if you grow too rapidly, you're going to run into that inventory issue where you're going to have that inventory and it may not be selling as quickly as you want it to. And then those opportunities drop out. You lose those opportunities. So it's very much this equilibrium kind of thing.
Just amazing that how you think about it, despite all the success, still thinking about the equilibrium and, pacing yourself for the long term and for the vision. And so, Lance, I want to switch gears a little bit. And I know that, being a fellow entrepreneur, that, they talk about it takes a village to, bring an idea to life. And I'm curious about the different types of resources and support you got. Like, did you tap into the SBA or other maybe community groups or mentors that really helped you out, during especially the early days?
Yeah, I think, like to thank Chase Bank for their credit card services. That was early on. The SBA definitely during COVID, that was, very, very helpful for us. And our partner, the company that helps us with our operations and sales, we definitely couldn't do the large scale things that we're doing without them. We would still definitely be at a smaller scale, a very, niche category. But I think what I did early on was, remember I was telling you about the award we won for the garlic? So we won a similar award for the broth at the fancy food show for hot beverages. So we won a gold Sophie Award. It was the first time a broth had ever won that award. And what I did after that was I realized, okay, we've got something. I need to talk to some people who might be able to help me and show them this. And that's what I did. And that's where it got me, right? Where I said, I think we have something unique here that might be a big idea. And here's how I think it fits. There were no savory, hot, drinks out there at all. And this has got, something behind it with this award. And that's what got me into those conversations. So I wasn't afraid of having those conversations with people. The difference between the food business and the technology business, what I noticed is that the technology business is driven by secrecy and propriety and it's a different kind of atmosphere. The food business, everyone shared resources and they share ideas and they introduce you to people. And so I really felt like, that really helped us a lot.
Obviously, when we talk about support and resources, yeah, you're a husband and wife team. So I'm sure you and Lori leaned on each other quite a bit. I'm curious, like, how has the relationship between you two evolved as business partners as well?
So my parents used to work together. And so I was, acutely aware of the good things and the bad things that went along with that. And, really learned a lot about family dynamics when it comes to that. Because it's not just the spouses, it's the children that are also part of it as well. So not to say that, everything we did was perfect, but I think we both really know our roles and we both have some overlapping capabilities, which are in the problem solving and the innovation and just, wanting to have fun. But then we both have really distinct other skills that are not overlapping. And I think that was really important. during COVID, it became really interesting because we spent even more time together, than what we were doing before, which I didn't know you could, but we did.
Yeah.
And, we just really learned how to kind of take those situations and not to say that there aren't challenges. There are challenges and we both like sometimes I want to head into something and take it on, but then she wants to sit back and think about it and analyze it. And there are times where I have that in the back of my mind and I go, I think I need to stop and let her kind of analyze it a little bit for me. And those always turn out to be good ideas when I do that.
And how has pursuing this dream changed how you perceive yourself?
It depends on the week
No.
or the day. Sometimes think I'm a rock star. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm starting over every day, But every once in a while, we have the opportunity to talk. Someone will ask us a question about either starting a product or a brand or something like that, and then we realize, oh, we actually know some stuff, and that it took a while for us to learn all these things, but we actually do. We don't know everything, and by the way, we don't want to know everything because the minute you think you know everything, you're done. The learning is done. You can't see things as they come out at you. You can't. We always think that we're like blind optimists when it comes to everything that we're doing. And so, but the times where people ask questions about things and then I go, "Oh, well, you do this." Then that's where I know, "Oh, I feel pretty good about what I've learned and the lessons that I've learned and does it mean it's the right thing for them? I don't know, but it seems to make sense to them, and they kind of go, and then I know when they ask me again, then I know, oh, whatever I told them before must have worked or something like that. So that makes me feel good.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And then when you have a chance and you're not firmly gripping the wheel of this, fast growing company, and you step back, are you proud of what you've accomplished?
I think that we have a view of what we're doing as this is something that will support our family and support our desire to create something that's different that people will rely on. Okay. And recently I was in a pitch competition for our product, and everyone was talking about how their product's going to save the planet and save the people and all this kind of stuff. And Lori and I were very much philanthropic. We donate to various causes and we don't use it as a marketing tool. We just, that's just not part of the deal. But the proudest I am of what we do, both and Lori too, is when we get a phone call from somebody who says, I just want to tell you that I was going through chemo treatment and your broth was the only thing that got me through those sessions because it settled my stomach and I felt great after that. Or I gave this to a friend who, was having a bad day and they couldn't stop raving about it. Or when we fly and we give out little packets of this to the flight attendants and say, here's something, you guys work really hard. It's a little gift. Hope that you enjoy it. And then they come back like 30 minutes later and can't stop talking about it. Those are the things that make us feel amazing and that we've actually accomplished something. But I got to tell you, every day I wake up going, okay, this could all be taken away from me now. I got to work my butt off to make sure that, we continue. And, what happened yesterday is great, but today it's a different deal. So, yeah. So I don't know. That's a long answer to your question.
Yeah, if I dive a little bit into it, I find some similarities in the answer that you just shared, which is when I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and they climb a mountain or they reach the top of a summit, oftentimes they're like, oh, what's next? What's next? And then that drives them and it gives them a sense of identity. And, when I asked you, hey, are you proud of it? You talked about, hey, this provides for my family. It helps other people. And there's this kind of extrinsic versus like this intrinsic of like, oh, does Lance ever take a time for himself to feed himself and reflect like, oh, you know what? I am really, really proud of what have been able to accomplish on this journey thus far.
Yeah, I get that from other people's feedback. I guess I've just learned that, let's put it this way, I'm very cautious about the accomplishments because I know that they're temporary. And so that's probably what drives me the most is to, and oh, by the way, do I get to take 10 days and take my son to Tokyo in June because I get to do that kind of stuff, so that's the reward.
Yeah. And then Lance, after you got laid off and you were, thinking about ideas, if you didn't jump on this, Millie sipping broth and you went and got another corporate job and, like if you were on your deathbed, how would you think you would feel?
Probably the same as I did when I was working those jobs before. There was always this sense of dread, when the quarter would come up and they'd go, did you hit your quota? Did you get that deal? Oh, we're going to run out of funding for the company. We're going to have to, there was always that, right? Which was not in my control. So I think that, that dread. Now, do I have different fears having my own business? Absolutely, I do. But I always know that I can go sell anywhere I want. We recently ran into a problem with Amazon where they have some features of their algorithm that make you do things as a provider that you were not aware of, and we literally had to almost rebuild all of our business with Amazon because of that. And but I know I could do it, and even though they were in control of that, I just knew that, look, I'll figure a way around it, and I don't have someone telling me, oh, you got to do it by tomorrow or else you're fired, kind of thing. So
it really strikes me that glass half full and that can-do entrepreneurial attitude. So, for listeners who might be in their 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, who have that quiet dream that, is maybe in the embers, it hasn't been extinguished and they keep putting it off, what would you say to them?
Don't quit your day job. Number one, do not. What you're thinking about, create, it's called minimum viable product, create it as good as you can, not perfect, like you said before, and find someone who will pay you for it and figure out why. They're very simplistic ideas, but they will tell you a lot about your idea. They'll tell you whether it makes sense to somebody else. Is someone going to give you money for it? Is it the right amount of money? Is it the right packaging? Is it the right, are you conveying the right idea? And do it as quickly as possible. Don't wait.
Yeah, no, speed and the pace of learning, I think, is super important. And I'll also reiterate what you shared earlier that I wrote down is be excited about it and make sure it solves some type of problem in conjunction with that MVP approach. And then the other thing I think that I took away was just how intellectually rigorous and honest you are, even though it's your baby that you came up with it. If it doesn't check all these boxes that you put out there, that's okay. Just move on to the next one, which a lot of people have a hard time doing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I see that too. I see it all the time.
So Lance, as the company keeps evolving and growing, what are the next set of challenges and opportunities facing you all?
So the biggest opportunity that we have is so with this, we've created this category of a hot, savory drink that is ultra portable, right? It just comes in a tea bag like this. You just rip it open and put it in a mug. Okay. So where is it needed? And, the experience we got from working with Weight Watchers was people needed this as part of their snack routine to help them feel better or to keep them from, grabbing a bag of Cheetos or something like that. Well, wouldn't it be amazing if, you in your company break room at 3:00 in the afternoon, when your body is kind of hitting a slump, when you went in there, that you had broth, some Thai lemongrass broth that you could drink instead of drinking the caffeine or sugar like Lori did. Or if you were in a hospital recovering And instead of the salty water that they serve, as super broth, that you were able to make a cup of pho, it's freshly made right on the spot that you could drink and recover easier with. Or yeah, if you're on an airplane and here comes that beverage cart, and if they offered you spicy tortilla broth to drink, I'm sure a lot of people would like that over, the terrible coffee sometimes that is being made. So those are the places that we're really focusing on being in to drive awareness to the idea of a hot, savory drink category. And oh, by the way, Millie's is the one that's filling that category.
Yeah. Well, in everything I've learned about category creation is, one, it's hard because that person in front has to break the wind for everyone else, and the fast followers get to slipstream. However, if they're able to own the category like Uber, Airbnb, whatever namesake, they get also the disproportionate amount of the rewards, because if you're one or two, your market share and it's just going to be much better. So I would imagine that's one of the reasons why you're trying so hard to find all these other distribution points and get out there in the market and create this category that you've pioneered.
Yeah, that's like today, this morning, I wake up and go, okay, what are you made of? You've got to find more of those places. We're getting that attention, which is fantastic, and providing value to those types of organizations, which when in turn will, keep feeding the whole cycle. And, but at the end of it, are we solving a problem for these organizations? Are we providing them value? Then that's key. And so, you had asked me, what advice would I give to people who are creating a new product? Well, it's got to be, you got to have something, a bigger idea that is going to service, a much bigger cycle of problem solving, desire, ongoing needs, intellectually stimulating, all that kind of stuff. And so that's the cool thing about what we've done.
And Lance, since we're all in the community together, what ask would you have of our audience and listeners?
First off, thank you for listening to the story. I hope it gave people some ideas about what you can do and the challenges that you can overcome. They're not insurmountable. So that's the first thing is, if you want to reach out to me personally on LinkedIn, feel free to do that. If you feel like your company needs broth in the break room, that would be amazing. Or if you work in a hospital and you think the patients would love broth to drink, or if you are one of those flight attendants that wants your company to carry us on the beverage cart, please, reach out to your management. But, we would love to connect with anybody. And I do have, people who do reach out, and any help that I can provide is a reflection of what help other people have provided me. And so don't be afraid to connect in a way that's comfortable.
Great. And so if someone is inspired by your story and they do want to connect, how can they follow, support, or connect with you? Feel free to, the socials, the emails, whatever you feel comfortable around you and or your brand.
Yeah. So our website is sippingbroth.com or Millie's Sipping Broth. Either one works. And so all of our contact information is there. You can text, you can email. It all comes directly to me. And then on LinkedIn, my name is spelled with two L's, Llance. So it's the LinkedIn and then Lance. So I'm the only Lance with two L's on LinkedIn. And, definitely follow us on social media. We're at Sipping Broths, plural, on all platforms. We've got some fun stuff that's out there. And we would love for you to, pick up a mug and do a mug shot with our product and tag us. But yeah, I definitely, I love connecting with people, and would love to, please reach out.
Wonderful. Well, that was Llance Kezner, a self-described problem-solving blind optimist who's turned a family challenge into a new food category and a kitchen table idea into a national brand. If you've been sitting on a dream, I hope this story reminds you that it's never too late, not ever too small, or not too unconventional of something to start today. Sometimes all it takes is even a setback, or a layoff in this case, to spark a new start. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep living with the courage and without regrets. Thank you, Llance.
Thank you so much, David. It's been a pleasure.
Before you go, if you're inspired and want to be a part of something bigger, subscribe, like, and share to help more people reclaim their dreams and live true to themselves. Also, let me know if you or someone you know would be an inspiring guest on this show. Together, let's spark courage to live without regrets. The UnLost Cause way, one story and one person at a time.